Hi, Lihini. Good morning. And good morning to everyone here.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for joining us. I explained a little earlier we had a small problem with getting on right on the dot, but no harm done. 9 minutes down, we're ready to start with Lihini Fernando, Municipal Councilor for the Moratuwa MC. As all of you by now must be knowing, this is part of our loosely titled COVID-19 and the City series. When I say loosely titled, it's because we don't limit it to cities. It's sometimes districts, sometimes entire provinces. But as far as possible, we try to reach out to people in positions of authority who are able to give us perhaps a closer look at the mechanics of how things are working within the local government bodies in these areas in relation to COVID-19. I think many of you who have listened in before may also know that a lot of the times, although we start off and our intention is to keep it to COVID-19, the conversation does become touch a lot of other areas. And although we say right at the start that we do tell our audience that this discussion will be recorded, and also that we prefer or we encourage our audience to ask questions relating to the topic. We do also understand that part of what we do is facilitate a conversation with the local representatives. So we will understand if you do have a question to ask, and of course we leave it to the person who comes on as a guest on our show to decide if they want to answer it and how they want to answer it. That being said, I have already said hello to Lihini, and I'm going to start with, as always, a little understanding of the Moratuwa area and what we're dealing with. As we know, Moratuwa is a suburb of Colombo. From what I understand, there are 24 areas that fall into the Moratuwa suburb. Lihini, do you have an idea of what the population is in
Yes.
Moratuwa? Yeah.
Currently, population is as at 2011-12 census, it's about 168,280. But however, it's now gone up to close to about 177,000 as per the latest statistics. So there
Okay.
are 42 Grama Seva divisions and 18 wards in the area.
Right.
Voters about 120,000.
Right. Okay. So now that we've got that information down, just to give our listeners a backdrop about the COVID-19 situation, do you know how many patients have come from Moratuwa in the last three waves, right from the start?
Yeah, so right from the start, there has been about 3,402 patients recorded, and the death rate is about 89.
Okay.
And if you take the vaccination, about 40% of population in Moratuwa has been vaccinated up to now. There are two MOH areas. This is the Egoda Uyana MOH and the Moratuwa MOH, which falls two MOH areas. And roughly, so they do close to about PCRs with three particular areas. So from Panadura, Moratuwa, and they go to these three areas get together and do the PCR test. And roughly, so from the data that I got, they do close to about 300 PCRs a day. These are also including random PCRs as well.
Right. So now something that many people have, or what I've heard from many people, is that they feel that the PCR tests are not indicative of the true situation because of various reasons. Either there are no PCR machines in that area, or not enough PCR tests are being done, or the PCR tests are late, and so the figures being issued by the government are not really representative of what's going on. Is this true of Moratuwa as well?
Yeah, there is some truth in that also, because there are PCR that happens via the MOH, and there are PCRs that people do it publicly, privately as well. So sometimes there's an issue when this data gets synced, so it is not recorded accurately, but roughly they do close to about 300 and also about 1,500 together from that's what they say from all these areas to combine together.
Right.
Nevertheless, it is kind of like an issue because this is not as we see these data not being synced. That is kind of like an issue that we see in this area.
Right. And in terms of PCR machines, this is something we discussed with Rehan Jayavikrama last week, where he told us that, in the south, I don't think he said Mathura didn't even have a PCR machine. And this is something that he had talked about. What about the Moratuwa area and the area surrounding? Do you know how many PCR machines there are, or are there any at all?
No, we don't have a PCR machine because to have a PCR machine, it's like a let's say it's quite a complex process because you need to have a particular person operating this particular machine, and it has to be in a controlled environment. So these areas don't have PCR machines either. It is sent to Colombo for testing purposes. That's how it generally happens. And we
Right.
operate with when it comes to patients, we operate with patients being sent to Lunava, Panadura, Homagama, all those hospitals also. So it's like PCR machines. There's no particular machine that is allocated in the area.
Right. So, okay. So let's talk about COVID-19 itself. Give not the vaccination drive or anything like that. What were the challenges that the Moratuwa area dealt with in terms of managing COVID-19 that are unique to the Moratuwa area? It could be because of population. It could be because of various demographics. Like, what are the unique challenges that Moratuwa faces in dealing with COVID-19?
So if you take Moratuwa is a highly populated area. Population density is quite high in this area. We see from one end it's the coastal line where you see a population of a lot of fishermen living, and then the other side you get the carpentry population, and people live in like clusters. We call these areas called vattas. So there are like a lot of shanty areas are there in Moratuwa. So if you take like after central Colombo, the highly shanty area is recognized to be Moratuwa. So that is one of the challenges in managing this pandemic, because if it gets on to this particular virus, the spread can be very very high. That's we found in the carpent. There's a particular area called Villoravatta Indibadda, which is the carpenters highly where the carpenter population is living. In that area, the spread was quite high, and then there was a lockdown as well. And even on the fishermen, where the fishermen are in the Korala Valley to Katakurunda, Moratuval, that area, that's also highly populated in this. So it is quite a high risk area, I would say. So managing, controlling has to be done very effectively. So
And do you think the government has offered you the kind of support you need to, or offer the local government body there the kind of support they need to deal with this, or do you think it's lacking, needs more support, something? What's your
I
take on this?
ideally, as a councillor, if more concentration was given to these areas, it would have been better. What I see is it's more like a reactive measure versus a proactive measure. Now, we after the during the first lockdown, we saw. I'll just go into some of the things that happened during the first lockdown. There was no particular plan as such at that time in terms of when the first lockdown went into. I mean, these people were suffering without food and all that, and then we saw a bit of the whole thing getting politicized. Then, when within the second lockdown at the council level, we proposed to formulate a committee comprising of local councillors of all parties so that we can manage this pandemic a little effectively. So then we formed a Corona committee. In that committee, we managed to bring in all the particular stakeholders, the MOH, the police, all particular people who are managing this pandemic, and we used to have like very frequent discussions. I think that was one of the good moves that the council took to kind of take measures to control. So periodically we used to take certain decisions. I think apart from the support the central government was giving, we sort of took certain measures to manage the situation. But ideally, government focus should have been far more centered, I would say. It should have been, but sadly, it is not as much as we expect.
Right. Let's switch to the more in this area.
So, as I said, now we know when the first pandemic came, I have to bring this up. When the first pandemic came, first lockdown came, we were at that time where there was a general election. So we saw that the mayor at that point took council funds amounting to about 8 million and distributed about 8,000 rations purely by putting his name. And it was a very politicized effort that at that point where he utilized council money 8 million for his personal political campaigning. So then only we kind of took it into our hands and said, you cannot use council money for propaganda purpose. Can you hear me?
Yeah, can hear you.
Sorry, there was a connection drop. Sorry about it.
Not an issue.
Yeah, just getting back to the question. So we were talking about the Moratuwa mayor. Recently we saw that there was an incident that occurred in Moratuwa with regards to this whole vaccination issue.
Yeah.
Actually, it is quite pathetic to see that kind of an incident, because something which we have noticed right from, as I said, when forming these Corona committees and being present on it and being a part of all those discussions, we saw that there was a rift always between the local council and the MOH in managing this particular situation. Because when doctors were giving certain advices, the mayor and the council, the mayor especially led by the mayor, there was friction. Where the political authority was getting in between the doctors, doctors controlling the situation. So then, we saw that conflict, and as a result, only it erupted the mayor behaving in that manner with regards to the vaccination drive being politicized, which was, I think, quite an unfortunate incident.
Right. Now, of course, we know he was, I want to say arrested, but he turned himself in and then was arrested
Yes.
for his behavior. And I also noted at that point that you had tweeted that this was not behavior that was new to him, and that this was the kind of sort of behavior that he had always displayed. Is
Yes.
there? I mean, only then when I did my research did I see there was an incident maybe a couple of weeks before in May itself, where again I think it was some residents of Moratuwa who were very angry with him for trying to do something. So within the municipal council, you're saying that it has always been difficult working with him.
Yeah, so let me give an overview. I'm not criticizing a person, but just to give you an overview. Like, this particular mayor has been there for the past 15 years, and this is his 11th year running as mayor. So he's kind of a person who is inbuilt into the system. So there's a certain level of authority that he exercises. So we see that, there are certain authorities that are stipulated for a mayor by the municipal council ordinance, and there we have seen many instances where he has gone above and beyond the stipulated authority. If you take the audited reports of the council and if you go through it, it is quite evident in terms of administrative defaults, administrative in terms of mishandling of finances. All of that is quite evident, and Auditor General himself has pointed out these incidences. And also, in terms of his conduct and in terms of his mannerisms, this is kind of the approach that happens in council level in terms of talking. I mean, these are not authorities where you treat people with respect. That is something which we find, like I, as a female councillor, talking at the council meetings, there are severe harassments that we go through in terms of getting our point across. So there is a severe issue, I would say, at the local government authority levels. This is not just only prevalent to Moratuwa, but if you take areas like Maharagam also, we recently saw that there was an incident like that which erupted also. So I think the type of people, the caliber of people that hold office in councils need to be rethinked, because people who are being given nominations, people who are being given the opportunity to contest are like people who are more or less popular in the area versus they being qualified or they being educated. So due to these reasons, we see this kind of behavior. So I think as a peak only we saw the mayor on that particular day speaking in that manner to the MOH officer, which was very unfortunate. And previously also there was an incident where he was trying to remove an unauthorized construction. So there is a process, there is an administrative process that one must follow, that if one is in office, and you must remember when you're sitting in that particular position that you are not a politician, but you are a person exercising the authority on behalf of all the citizens. in the city. But what happens is people taking this office, taking these positions, at the end of the day, take decisions in favoring their political party. This is what we see mostly happening in local councils, which is very unfortunate.
Right, but now you also said, okay, at the time you also said that the opposition in the council had filed a petition or a letter calling
Yes,
for his removal. Can you give me a
yes.
little more information on that? Who, if I mean, if the councillors have no issues with their names being raised, who was a part of it? What did they? What was required? Like, what did you all request, and where did you all submit this to? And what the process is? What happens
Yeah.
next?
Right. So now, since beginning of this year, 2021, we have had issues with the mayor in terms of our freedom of speech, where at the council level there are certain committee stage reports which we take up to debate, but the mayor has been suppressing us in terms of bringing these reports and talking. So our freedom of speech is curtailed. So on this premise, we wrote to the governor once, but there was no response to it. So, combining all these issues, we wrote this time after this particular incident to the governor again, highlighting the issues that we have faced and to take more stern measures regarding Moratuwa, to kind of like have a monitoring and evaluation body to monitor the administrative process of Moratuwa and also the behavior and the conduct. So, on that basis, the opposition leader, signed by the members of the opposition, we handed over a letter this letter saying that he should resign. We gave it to the commissioner, which to be tabled at the next council meeting. And also at the very same time, we have handed over a letter to the governor also to take certain measures and to control and monitor the situation in Moratuwa Council.
Right. And how many members of?
So as the next steps, we hope
Go ahead.
as next step, we hope that the governor will
Respond.
take action and respond. Yes.
Okay. And how many opposition members are there in the Moratuwa Municipal Council? Just as a breakdown.
Uh, so
Yeah.
altogether, there is 48 and 23 in the ruling party, and the rest are in the opposition.
Right. Okay. Great. Okay. So I'm going to switch a little bit from COVID.
Let me correct
Yeah.
you there. Let me correct you there. 23 plus 4, the SLFP4 also have joined the SLPP now. So altogether that is 27. 4 JVP, 1 independent. Then the rest are the UNP and SJD.
Right. Thanks very much for that information. So, okay, I'm going to switch a little bit to the larger issues. Besides COVID-19, what are some of the key issues and challenges that the people of Moratuwa have faced for a while? How long have you been with the Moratuwa Municipal Council, Lihini?
So I joined the council in 2018 when I ran for office with a 25% quota they introduced for women participation. Then I ran for council, and then since 2018, since that local government elections, I've been there in the council.
Right. So, in your understanding, what do you think people of Moratuwa need sorted out for them the most?
So the poverty is a big issue. Housing is a major issue.
Right.
There are a lot of shanty areas in Moratuwa living along the coastal line. And there are a lot of people living around the railway line. So all these people need to be given houses. So there has not been a major housing project that was executed in Moratuwa for a long time. So you get these clusters, these pockets, as I called before, Vatta areas, the Vattas, clustered areas. So people in these areas need to be given shelter. Then if you take in terms of livelihood, there's the fisherman community. There has not been anything substantial in terms of improving their livelihoods. That is one. Then the carpentry industry, they are facing a lot of challenges in terms of selling their particular manufactured goods. So there has not been any development for that. Then if you take in terms of these are like the main issues, and also the drug abuse is very high in Moratuwa.
Right.
Yeah, that is a major issue.
Okay, so when I was talking to when I was speaking to Rehan last week, he did bring up the Municipal Councils Act and the Urban Councils Act. And we were talking about how these are two very strong pieces of legislation that were designed to give urban councils and municipal councils the power to empower them to do what they need to do. But that the Provincial
Yes.
Councils Act in '87 sort of superseded some of the powers that the municipal council has and that the urban council has. Rehan was of the view that provincial councils are sort of white elephants that would be better like done away with completely. Where do you stand on this debate, Lihini?
Yeah, I also agree with that point because provincial councils are more or less white elephants because now if you take Sri Lankan administration, it's into three structures: the parliament, the provincial, and the local council. So because of these three structures, budgets are decentralized to a larger extent. So when it's decentralized, the amount of money that the councils get are further filtered, which is an issue. Ideally, what I would see is if the central government can allocate significant amount of funding for the councils concentrated towards its development, we can see the city areas will be developed much more faster. Now, for example, if I'm to say now, if you are to build a road in in Moratuwa, let's say, if we want funding, we have to either go behind a provincial council minister, or either we have to go behind a parliamentary minister who will allocate funds to develop this particular road. But I'm of the view that if the taxpayer is paying money, all taxpayers should be treated equally. So it is not about a councillor going behind an MP to get funding to develop a road. It should be the central government's responsibility to ensure that money is allocated so that development happens in a systematic manner. But here it doesn't happen. It is more or less about the capability and the ability of the councillor and the connections that they have to rope in the funding from the central government. This is a major issue that I see in Sri Lanka. This in Sinhala we call this Mantri Pratipadana. The allocation of Mantri Pratipadana. The decentralization, I think, is a fundamental issue.
Right. Okay. Now I'm going to open the session up for questions from our Twitter Spaces audience. I just want to remind everybody that we would like to focus the questions on COVID-19 in the Moratuwa area, simply because, like I said, otherwise the conversation goes everywhere. But it's up to Lihini to decide if she wants to answer something. And yeah, let's try not to make this go. I mean, a lot of the time we've noticed that the question session go on for a good 45 minutes. So I don't, I'm trying to restrict that this time. So we'll leave about, I'd say 20 minutes to half an hour for questions, and we'll pick it up again. Is there anyone who has a question for Lihini about the Moratuwa Municipal Council and COVID-19 challenges there? Or maybe what it's like as a female councillor dealing with the challenges unique to the Moratuwa Municipal Council. Right. It seems I just checked with the team. It seems there are no questions, which you could look at as a good thing, Lihini. We can continue with our conversation. So yeah, I'd like to. Yeah, it seems like there was somebody who had a question and seems to have left the Twitter Spaces. So maybe he will come back. But in the meantime, let's continue with our conversation. I'd like to understand the local government, I mean the municipal council in particular, and how it works. Would you be
Okay.
able to explain, yeah, some of the nitty-gritties of this system to our listeners?
Yeah, so when it comes to local councils, there are particular responsibilities that are mainly that is vested with the local council. Basically, managing the waste in the particular area. Waste management is one of the primary responsibilities, and also when it comes to area road development, and also ensuring that sanitation and health facilities, like for example, things like dengue control becomes one of the main important factors that falls in the responsibility of the council, and also to ensure that public benefit, public welfare is maintained, and public facilities are maintained. Yeah, and also street lighting, road development mainly, and also town planning. So these are all the responsibilities that are vested with the council, and there's a municipal council act which gives enormous powers to the municipal to the mayor in the particular area to take certain decisions with regards to the area. But as I said, though the main funding lines for the council will be from assessment rates, stamp duty that is earned from assessment rates is the main funding that comes in, and also certain tax monies that come in from the services that are offered, and also garbage collection, the monies that are collected from garbage collection. So apart from that, there's certain allocations that come from the central government. But then again, as I mentioned to you, these are more or less decentralized budgets, which is not sufficient for the development of an area. What we see is, like, for example, from time to time, governments bring in certain projects. Now, if you take the present government, they have this project called the Sapirigama project. So under the Sapirigama project, road development takes place. During the Yahapalanya, there was sorry, I don't get the name. Palne, they had the Gampiralia project. Sorry, Gampiralia project, which went for road development. So that from time to time, then the particular minister in the area, if he has power, they manage to allocate funding. So based on that only the development happens. So during the Gampiralia time, there was about 167 roads in Morocco that was developed, including drains. So, but overall, what I see is it shouldn't be political party driven. It should be like, there should be some kind of like a centralized plan which happens year on year, which we don't see is a main issue. Like what happens in Sri Lanka is there's a complete system fallout. It is very evident when it comes to the administration of municipal councils, to see how the system per se has collapsed. System is politically driven versus driven via a process. So if there was a particular process that was in place, which the government had put place, that every year or every 4 years a particular road is developed, or drains are developed, and if the area has this many number of square kilometers, this amount of funding is allocated. Then garbage collection, there's a scientific manner in which it happens. So these are things I think, as policy wise, the government should implement. So it is rather discretionary, and also it depends on the ability and the capability of the mayor. So I must also say that this particular mayor in Moratuwa, his focus has been primarily for garbage collection, and he has brought in waste management projects also in Moratuwa, which is in operation at the moment. Because his primary interest is waste management, that project is happening. But then there is waste segregation is given to the local people, where they have to segregate the waste in a very orderly manner. So it is been then again passed down to the taxpayer, causing severe inconveniences. But then again, people in Moratuwa have to bear that, and waste is segregated in a very very methodical manner. So the perishable waste and the non-perishable waste, and that is also further segregated into different components. So that's primarily what happens in these particular areas. But as I said, when it comes to council management, there has to be more centralized, more focus coming in from the should be given coming in from the central government.
Just explain to me, how is it that the mayor doesn't have a term limit?
Mayor has a term limit. This mayor has been getting elected. Now this is third term. Every 4 years, the term was 4 years. Now this is him running for his 11th
And
year.
there's no cap on the amount of, like, the number of terms he can run.
No, that's
Right.
what. There's
And
nothing
is
like
there no one within within, say, the Moratuwa Council itself, or even other councils, young politicians like yourself, who want to maybe try and change that?
To be honest, nobody wants to, I would say, people don't want to come into this council system, because it is not a very pleasant environment. These councils, if you take, like, as I told you earlier, like the mannerism, the behavior, the type of people, the caliber is not something that any educated people will want to place themselves in. because it is not a very pleasant environment, and we don't see very many educated people taking center stage. And also, if you sadly, if you take the wage, the salary of a council member, it is very abysmal. So that particular salary that is paid to a councillor, you can't expect a professional to come and work in a council for a salary of that nature. So this is also one of the reasons why it doesn't attract good caliber people, let's say educated professionals, to come into this particular political system. So I'm of the firm belief that when people say, you know, the 225 in parliament are responsible for the destruction of this country, when people say that, but I'm a firm believer to say that not only them but the local councillors also, because local council level is the starting point of corruption in this country, where building plans are passed for bribes. Everything here happens for bribes, because if you really take the salary that a councillor earns versus the lifestyle that they live, there's a huge mismatch. And I think, you know, there needs to be bodies established to monitor these councils in a much more effective manner. If you actually take their asset declarations and ask them to declare, I think the figures will be mind boggling.
Right. Thanks. Okay, just going back to COVID-19 for a second. What's happening in terms of relief? What's happening in terms of people's livelihoods? People who are now locked in under travel restrictions, unable to go out. What is the story there?
So when it came to relief, people who were quarantined in the area with the assistance of the council and the divisional secretariat, there was a ration pack that was given to people who are home quarantined. This is something which we started right from the beginning. But apart from that, there are particular suppliers that how these delivery systems operate in the area, and there are certain designated shops which people can go to consume. But the sad part is, as I said, there's a majority of the not majority, I would say, about 40% of the population are close to about maybe daily wage earners to three-wheel drivers to carpenters. So their livelihoods are highly affected. So they are in quite a bit of a trouble at this point, because they are not in a possibility to meet their ends. So there are constant requests that come to us councillors, requesting for rations, requesting for food, and there has not been a focused effort apart from the government 5,000 rupees. That again is also politicized. It's been given to some of the recipients, and other people are on secondary basis.
Right. That was what I also wanted to follow up with. How many people are actually reaching out to you and to councillors themselves because of the inability to, because they're not receiving the relief that should come to them. And to tie to that, during the vaccination drive that began, like I think a couple of weeks ago, uh, did anyone reach out to you, wanting you to help with favors, wanting you to help them jump the line, or anything like that?
Yeah, so there was the vaccination drive. I would say, sadly, initially the MOH and the management, there were issues, and we saw the mayor came, and he had his particular method which he implemented. I'm not being overly critical, but then the mayor introduced the method. The method is good, but he trying to take it under his control and making politicizing it is what was not accepted. Had he executed that method together with the MOH, it would have been successful. But what he tried was to take it into his hands, and for them to distribute tokens and get about with it, which was not acceptable. Ideally, he, MOH, Grama Sevaka, if all of them together could have executed that method, it could have been a good one. But then what we must understand also is that the responsibility when it comes to the vaccination lies with the MOH, and it's not with the local councils. We must remember that in this country, the vaccination has always happened via the medical authorities. And local councils, all what they can do and should do is to assist, not to override the MOH. But what we saw the situation in Moratuwa is overriding. So we saw that people coming in, jumping queues, who connected people, politicians coming, jumping the queue and getting favors. So that was there. I also saw it from my own eyes. And because that is again because there is no proper system and there is no proper centralized mechanism to put the system. But now what I can say is now with the starting of the second dose, things have been falling into place. And the second dose they have started in giving in Moratuwa. Last week they started and today and the coming days it's continuing. So the second dose is happening in a methodical manner.
Right.
The
And
emoji,
no questions, no criticism about the second dose yet.
yeah, so far now it happened last week in a particular area. Today it's happening at the municipal council car park. It's happening, and also in the coming days. So far there has not been any complaints.
Right, that's great. Okay, so just before we sort of wind up, I have three sort of broad questions to ask you. One is, I know we've focused on the Moratuwa Municipal Council and we did touch some other areas as well in terms of Provincial Council and the Provincial Council Act. But just to touch on the national level, Lihini, because I do know that you do operate also on a national level. How do you think the government has managed COVID-19 thus far, and where do you think they've mismanaged it or failed to manage it for whatever reason? It could have been just being overwhelmed, bad decision making, whatever the reason. Where do you think they've failed in terms of decisions, and what is lacking?
Yeah. So one thing where okay, the first wave I would give credit to the government. They managed the first wave. We saw people like Dr. Anil Jasingh taking being in the decision making forums. But then, as come the second wave and the third wave, the management of this particular COVID has not been satisfactory. Because if you take the vaccination drive per se, initially they said it was above 60 years, then they came to 30 to 60 years. So there was no particular prioritization and which the health workers should have been vaccinated initially and then the elderly population. So there should have been a particular systemized method which didn't happen. And then also this whole fiasco about AstraZeneca, the second dose not being available. Ideally, when the first dose was given, they should have planned for the second dose, which also didn't happen, which is a major flaw of the government. And we don't see that people with the knowledge sitting in the decision making places, because pandemic is not a political exercise but it's a medical exercise. So you need to have virologists, you need to have doctors who have the understanding to take the decisions. What we see is military taking decisions. It's not about controlling or people management. It's about knowing to make the right decisions at the right time. Like even this particular lockdown that we are presently in, extending the lockdown, we saw the mockery that happened in terms of how the decisions are taken, decisions are revised. So we see that the government trying to play politics with the pandemic. And also initially, I spoke about the Muslim burial issue that happened initially, how that was politicized, which is very unfortunate. What we must understand in Sri Lanka is that this divide of party politics, divide of caste, creed, color, we must give more understanding. We have to be more empathetic towards the people in this country, and we don't see that the leaders who are sitting in the top positions are being empathetic towards the needs of the people. Also, in terms of I was something that I can say in terms of distributing this 5,000 initially. When it came to it, they were trying to politicize the whole thing. It was like their political exercise, which was very pathetic to see. And also during the second wave, the focus was the 20th Amendment. Then the third wave, it was the Port City Bill. Until the Port City Bill was passed, we didn't go down to a lockdown. So there, the GMOA was making statements. They used to come on media. It was, and then the public was making outcry. Then only the government finally decided to close down. So and also if you take with regards to this particular data that is being released, are we releasing the correct data? I think it is important that we tell the public the truth. If the truth is revealed, then people can be careful. And we also see that there is a disconnect between Dr. Sudarshani Fernando Pulle and the other authorities, other people that are taking center stage. We see there's conflict between the government in expressing the opinion. From if I look at it from a Sri Lankan a citizen living in this country, it is very unfortunate. And also in the midst of the pandemic, when people are suffering, we see SUVs being brought down by politicians and money being given to development projects, then money allocating for gym construction. So where is the priority? What is the priority? Is a big question.
Right. I actually did want to swing to the SUV question. Where do you stand on that? Where does your party stand on that? Where does your party leader stand on that?
I'm sorry, I cannot comment on my party leader. They will probably talk about it in the coming days. But I think, personally, if you ask me, I don't think this is the time for it.
Right. And what about now to bring it back again to your party leader? As you know, he's being lampooned a lot on social media for posturing, for, people are calling him a weak leader who's out of touch
Yeah.
with the times. And I did ask Rehan the same question. Do you think that this is just bad, like miscommunication? Do you actually have faith that he's the future?
Uh, so to answer that now, when it comes to the opposition in this country, there's a particular mentality on what the opposition should be. Now we saw when the Yahapalana was in office, how the opposition then behaved, where they were always on the roads, having protest after protest. So we don't see the same thing happening from SJB. So because of that reason, probably people talk about SJB. Are they a strong opposition? We don't see that particular outcry in terms of going out there holding placards or crippling the system to crippling the government system. We don't see that. So that is also one of the allegations which we get, saying where is the opposition. But we do see Sajid Premadasa making statements in parliament and bringing it into the attention of the government in many instances when it comes to the vaccination drive. Then
Hmm.
even when it came to the this whole environmental issue, and even this particular petrol hike. So he does make a conscious effort, and also he has gone beyond. He has reached to the foreign ambassadors to seek assistance at an international level to Sri Lanka, which I don't think any particular opposition leader had done in the past. So again, the question comes: is Sajid Premadas a statesman, or is he a politician? What is the role that he's playing? This is the question that people ask. I think his leadership style is different to what is being exercised by the previous opposition leaders that were in office. But
Hmm.
I wouldn't say he's weak. It's just that his style of management probably is different.
Very different, right? I still think he needs to get a better social media manager, but that's just my personal point of
Yeah.
view.
Yeah, probably you have
Um,
a point we yourself raised in terms of media management. Yeah, again, also we don't have the state, we don't have the support of media channels. That I think is a very weak position. We don't have media channels to come and voice out or to back us up. So it's all about
hmm.
social media, and the air time that we get is also very less. So due to this reason, also some other things that are being talked out doesn't come. So I think the social media management overall needs to improve. I
Right.
take your
Okay.
point there.
Okay. My very last question. As we know, and this is something that everybody has been talking about, there are so many archaic pieces of legislation, or just even if not archaic, legislation that's sort of not suited to the current times that are still in use in Sri Lanka. So hypothetically, without the process of parliament majority and all of that, hypothetically, if you were able to change three of these pieces of legislation, which would they be?
Mm, so I, as a lawyer, I would say the civil procedure in this country needs changing. The legal system needs fast action. Robust legal system, Sri Lanka is of dire need. Uh, we see justice delayed is justice denied. So we see court cases now. Altogether, there's about 725,000 court cases in Sri Lanka. So severely there is a backlog. So new regulations need to come in, and also technology needs to be brought in terms of managing how the court cases are being asked, and that whole system I think needs a revision and legislature in that area, and also laws pertaining to women and children. These are things that needs revision. So I think Sri Lanka needs to identify issues, non-political issues, like issues pertaining to women and children are things which any political party can champion if they have the will. It doesn't have to be the opposition or the government, or they together can work in these areas and pass the relevant legislation so that women's rights are being met. We see the Domestic Violence Act in Sri Lanka needs revisions. Then also this when it comes to a victim, domestically a victim, the process of sensitizing is required. How the judge, the judiciary, the police, then the foster homes, how all these things must work together. And the rights of the child, aspects related to malnutrition, their development, all these things need to be put in place. And I, as a young politician, would like to see a new legislature like the Campaign Finance Act that is being brought in to Sri Lanka, where money that is spent on campaign can be regularized. If
Right.
that can happen, I believe we can have a level playing platform to the so-called veteran politicians, established politicians, and the new people who will want to run for office. So I think campaign finance regulations, making asset declarations public should happen immediately in this country, which I
Right.
don't think that they will agree, but I think civil society pressure should come for that.
Great. I mean, these are really very important pieces of legislation that you've highlighted to be changed. I think just before we wind up, I'm going to open up once more to the public or to the public within our Twitter spaces. If there's anyone who'd like to ask a question, you know the process. Hit the mic button on your left and request a chance to speak, and we will let you ask your question. I did get a few messages saying there were people who wanted to speak. Hi, Nafis.
Hello,
Hello. How are you?
I'm good. How are you? Yeah,
Okay.
when I'm talking, I had a question. What are the steps that you've taken in Morocco to eradicate period poverty and to increase women's quality of life in Morocco?
Right. We at the council, we were for the past, let's say, 3 years, we were trying to establish a committee for women and children in Moratuwa. But for the past 3 years, we have been fighting for it, and it is only this year that we managed to get the mayor's consent to sort of revise an existing committee to have the women's and children's portfolio included. uh, we wanted a separate committee, but he didn't permit for it. And there were no particular budgets that were allocated for the development of women. So in that sense, from a council level, it has not been quite practical, but to get anything executed. But from a personal level, we have done many education programs in terms of educating the women with regards to their rights. We have done that. We were actually in discussion about having this particular pad machine, whether we could bring it down. There was a project which we were trying to bringing down, and we were having discussions with certain parties in India also. But because of this COVID lockdown, we have not been able to pursue that. So apart from the council level, on a personal level, at a party level, we have done certain programs to educate women on women's rights and children, and to assist them in terms of their livelihoods, and also to educate on the drug abuse. These are some of the things which we have taken done.
Does this answer your question, Nafis?
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. Is there anyone else who has a question? No, it seems like we've got all our questions in. I think, Lihini, you were very comprehensive with your explanations on how the local government system works, especially in the municipal council level, and some of the major challenges that you all have faced, not just during COVID-19, but even previously, with the makeup of the council there, and also how you all have dealt with relief measures, how you're dealing with PCR testing, and the rollout of the vaccine. Thanks so much for joining with us. It was very interesting to hear, the mechanics of the Moratuwa Municipal Council.
Thank
We
you.
hope. yeah, we hope everybody else also learned something interesting from this. And we encourage you to tweet to Lihini if you have a question, not just about COVID-19, but about anything else. I'm sure she will answer. Thanks so much, Lihini.
Sure. Thank you, Roel, for having me, and it was a pleasure talking to you. And thank you, Ro.
Not at all. Thank you. All right. Thank you, everybody.